Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Snowflake Office Hours with Simon Data, the customer data platform built for today's data-rich, multi-channel world. Simon is built to drive measurable lift at the entire customer lifecycle and turns data into meaningful revenue. Over the next 30 minutes, we will spend time talking to Matt Barron, who leads solution architecture, working with Simon's greatest prospects and clients, mapping use cases to technology in order to enable one-to-one personalized marketing. I am also joined by Cody Schwartz, engineering lead at Simon, where he works on building new data-intensive products that support brands to drive more effective and personalized marketing. And my name is Jeannie Liu. I'm a product marketing manager at Snowflake. I'll be the moderator for today's event. As always, live questions will be asked at the very end of the session, but please feel free to type them in throughout the duration of Cody and Matt's talk. As always, please ask any and all questions because no question is off limit. Matt, without further ado, off to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. And excited to talk about Simon and particularly how we leverage Snowflake within our business to both drive value internally as well as for our mutual Snowflake customers. So with that. High-level overview of Simon. We're a customer data platform built for the enterprise. So we enable customers to bring all of their customer data into one place. This spans across transactional data, customer service data, web and email engagement data, bringing all that interaction data into one place to allow customers to build really targeted audiences and then drive coordinated and personalized marketing campaigns across all of their different marketing channels. So it's really one place to both do all of your segmentation and experimentation across all of your marketing channels. This allows for a cohesive and coordinated experience across email, push, SMS, on-site, and other owned and paid media channels as well. To that end, this is like a broad overview of what Simon looks like. We're a piece of technology that sits between all those data sources I described, and then really enables customers to expose all that data. One of the ways we do that is through Snowflake data shares. Our customers are able to share directly with us and activate all of the data that lives in their warehouse directly in our platform for use in all of the great activities I described before. And then the data from that feeds back. We build out a events database on the back of that that's able to be shared back with our customers for analytics and reporting purposes as well, while a lot of that is also enabled through the platform directly itself. And with that, I'll pass it over to Cody, who will go a layer deeper into exactly how we really leverage Snowflake under the hood to do a lot of the things I just described.
Thanks, Matt. So we'll start with why Snowflake. Why do we look to Snowflake, and why do we think Snowflake was a unique solution that would help us? So primary reason, really, it started with autoscale. So we first looked to Snowflake because of the way it can sort of scale across three key dimensions. So the first being vertical scale, we'd be able to auto size up the cluster for more demanding workloads. Horizontal scale, we could easily add more computing resources if the concurrency of our queries got too high. And then really storage scale, so we could limitlessly add data into Snowflake and really not worry about running out of space. The next one being isolated workloads. So it wasn't just we could add more power, it was that we wanted isolated power so that we could have queries hitting the same data just as we were loading more data and transforming more data, and have this really continue to provide a seamless experience for our clients within the application. The third being data sharing. So as Matt mentioned, we've really started to leverage data sharing both in terms of data in, but as well as data out. And Snowflake's unique product here really helped us just immediately add a new capability to what we were doing. The next would be just like Snowflake being very flexible. Snowflake's been great at sort of picking up different workloads while it sort of excels at some. It's a very flexible tool that can provide us, the power and the capabilities we need in various ways. And then lastly is really just like the ability to plan for growth. With Snowflake, we knew we were going to have a solution or a data warehouse solution that really would grow with us, and then also a partner that would grow with us too. And as Snowflake innovates, we'd really be able to benefit from that innovation. So our architecture with Snowflake, as Matt said, we're collecting data from various different sources and bringing them into our platform to enable our clients to drive both marketing and also get insights about their marketing. So the data that we're pulling in includes on-site, in-app data, data from third-party SaaS tools like an email service provider or CRM or customer support. And we also integrate directly with our clients' databases and data warehouses, whether these are on-premises or in the cloud. From there, we run the data through various data pipelines and land the data into S3. From S3, we load the data into Snowflake, really using two processes, either Snowpipe or just standard copy jobs. So for Snowpipe, immediately when the data is in S3, notification goes off and the data is queued up for loading into Snowflake. And then within Snowflake, we are largely leveraging ELT. With Snowflake's ability to scale and isolate the workloads, this has worked very well for us. And an added benefit of a really strong ELT framework has been a lower barrier to entry for some of our developers to spin up new views on the data, and also really enabling our customer success managers to provide bespoke views and bespoke tables for our clients all within the same data warehouse. So once the data is in Snowflake, it's well organized in the various schemas for our clients. We then use that same data for campaign reporting, for funnel analysis. That's the same data we use for data sharing with our clients. And then it's also where data science model development and deployment can happen. So wanted to share, some experiences and lessons learned and maybe tips and tricks while using Snowflake. So Snowflake really comes enabled with a lot of, fancy bells and whistles. So some of the ones that we really liked are that Snowflake is really great at staged file manifests and maintains a sense of what files have been loaded from a given directory in S3. And this can be really convenient and beneficial when looking to load data. Second, the query profile has been huge for us. It really helps us dig into query performance, understanding how many partitions are being scanned, what queries are hitting cache data locally or going to S3. And that's really helped us get through query performance bottlenecks and make queries more efficient for our users. The next is Snowpipe the data. So as I mentioned, we're heavy users of Snowpipe. And Snowpipe's really cool and takes horizontal compute scaling to the next level because loading the data doesn't even touch your own resources. As I mentioned, we use S3 notifications, which we found very easy to set up. But there's a few gotchas with Snowpipe. You need to be deliberate about the data that you're landing in S3 and how often you're writing it there and the size of the files, because that's immediately the same way that the files then get loaded into Snowflake. And Snowpipe is not as cost efficient as running a copy on your own resources, and there seems to be basically a fixed spin-up cost per task. So be conscious of that when really looking to use Snowpipe. And then the last one is really take control of clustering. So for us, we're really loading the data in once, and then there's going to be a lot of users or a lot of consumption downstream of that. And so we want to make sure that the data is very properly clustered so as to have optimal query performance. So that means, recluster early and often. So really recluster all the time. And we even take that to the next level sometimes and, take care of clustering ourselves. So one way we do that is loading the data in ordered by our clustering keys to make sure it's really optimal. Again, you're going to be querying the data more times than you're loading it. So, potentially take the next step if it really helps your query patterns. And then while we use recluster, the sort of out-of-the-box Snowflake command, sometimes we even do this a step further and explicitly delete and then reinsert the same files in a clustered manner or in an ordered manner so as to improve the clustering. And this is something we do a lot with the Snowpipe data because that can come in many small pieces which really turn into micro partitions within Snowflake. So lastly, just wanted to touch on our data sharing, as Matt alluded to. So core to Simon's business is enabling marketing to leverage valuable data inside their data warehouse without requiring you to write custom scripts and running homegrown ETL into a marketing tool. We generally do this across our clients by getting a read-only user in their data warehouse or database and running a white label ETL into our system. But Snowflake basically built a product for that. That's their data sharing. So, with data sharing, we have direct access to the underlying data in our client's account, and it's in a sort of easy to manage share within Snowflake. And so this allows us to really transform the data within Snowflake without having it leave. and provides much more of a seamless experience for our clients when setting up. They just create a share, can follow the docs on Snowflake site, and it's very straightforward. And that's for getting data into Simon. In terms of we also share data back to our clients. So this can include the data that we're capturing from various different data sources and the data generated by our clients' use of Simon itself. So these views can go back into our client's database, and they can be immediately used for joining it up into their other core data for bespoke analysis in their BI tool of choice. So really with sharing, the experience of using Simon to market across channels using all of your data warehouse data becomes really incredibly seamless and powerful, even more seamless than, it is, before. So with that, we wanted to, open it up for questions. A little short story of how Simon's using Snowflake and how Snowflake really serving as a powerful data warehouse infrastructure for us for provision the application.
Excellent. Thank you, Cody and Matt. So we've got a handful of questions in, but I did want to kick it off with this. So on slide 5, you mentioned auto scale, and that's obviously very important to us. You mentioned vertical scale, horizontal scale, as well as storage scale. So those are 3 important things that our product allows you to do. But I also wanted to bring up the point that you could actually spin down those resources, right? So you can expand, but in order to plan for your worst day, like a Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you're actually able to use the resources that you need for that worst day scenario and spin them down when you're not using it so that you have a pay-as-you-go model. So that's very important for companies that need the flexibility of pricing. Okay, so one of the questions that we got here was related to S3. So it looks like you guys are using S3, but has there been thought about maybe potentially going to another storage bucket, for example, and how would you think about using a multi-cloud situation?
So I guess I'll start and pass it off to
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, I guess the S3 piece there is really what we use internally. But when our customers, choose to use to provide data, so they can either provide it through a direct database integration or through, an FTP or another cloud file share. Is we already support all of that. So it's really just that, a lot of our infrastructure is built within the AWS services, so we use S3 internally, but are agnostic to, the file storage mechanisms that our customers use and can pick up data from a lot of different places.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I mean, I think the other point I'd add is, we're increasingly interested in leveraging Snowflake's sort of cross-region and cross-cloud replication strategies, and that's where, we could use a cross-cloud replication strategy alongside data living in another cloud storage bucket and really provide, again, a seamless experience for our clients.
Excellent. I'll open to a couple more product questions and then we'll go into implementation because I see a lot of implementation questions from the audience. So does your current EDW support in-memory storage is the first question. So let's tackle that first.
Does our current, so we're using Snowflake as our EDW. So we're using it as the data warehouse that backs the application for our Insights product. And then we're also leveraging it internally for our own reporting and BI work. And so we're really using a setup that is Snowflake with Looker sitting on top of Snowflake and dbt, which governs the ELT process. And then, obviously that data within Snowflake lives in S3, but, increasingly looking to just get more of that data cached locally when the different worker nodes are spun up, and, the performance there has been, sufficient for us.
Excellent. Can we use HDFS as storage system instead of S3?
Can we, is that a sort of a, maybe that's a better question for you in terms of like loading data into Snowflake. I'm not certain if HDFS can be used as a staging environment for loading data in to Snowflake, but I think it's more local staging within Snowflake or cloud data storage or cloud blob storage, if that's right.
Yeah, so we can use HDFS. for the individual who asked this question. Okay, let's just move a little bit here. Let's go into the data sharing piece. There's a question around your use case of it. So it sounded like most of your usage was on Snowflake's data sharing capabilities. Do you have any web app components that connect directly to Snowflake? For example, sending an email on how much data the client has, or generating a graph or dashboard? If so, do you have any tips on using Snowflake for web apps?
Sure. So our insights products, so think, anything that's about understanding performance of campaigns or understanding, building a lightweight funnel of different marketing activities, those products are sitting or sort of querying Snowflake underneath. So, in terms of tips and tricks, I think one is make sure that you've got auto scale standard enabled and you can easily spin up more clusters if many client queries are coming through, just so you can make sure you can handle the load. The other one is really think critically, as I was mentioning about the clustering, to make sure the queries are as optimal as can be. And then lastly is really think about how you can store or cache the data to enable faster lookups. So this can be more eagerly loading data into the sort of the local worker nodes, because the queries directly on the SSD data that's sort of cached in the virtual data warehouses, those queries are many times faster than the data in S3, depending on the query profile.
Excellent. This question is about storing data. So do you store data in pure table format within Snowflake? And can you access those tables directly?
Sorry, I didn't catch the type of table. What was that?
It's more about, I think, from a data sharing perspective, right? We do store these all this data in pure table format within Snowflake, and then they're directly accessible to our customers via the data share.
Excellent. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's go into the implementation phase. So the first question about implementation is really what were some challenges and what were some advantages over using SQL Server?
For one, I think given our use case here, we were looking for a column store. So, most of these queries are really OLAP queries that are going to scan large amounts of data and really look for just a few of the columns within the data. So that's where we wanted a cloud column store. And then, as I mentioned previously, some of the auto-scale properties of Snowflake, along with some of the other capabilities, were a really good fit for us. So, that really helped us get going. We actually first got really comfortable with Snowflake using it to set up our own internal data warehouse. So, basically we got comfortable with the semantics, we got comfortable with the different virtual data warehousing approaches, and really got very comfortable with Snowflake before we started rolling this into the application. And so, I think it's go slowly, read the documentation, and make sure that you understand all the sort of APIs, because again, Snowflake is, while pretty easy to use, it does operate and it is structured a bit differently than other systems out there.
Excellent. So let's talk about Snowpipe here. A couple questions came in about your usage of Snowpipe, and just for everyone on the line, if you don't already know, Snowpipe basically enables loading data from files as soon as they're available, so in a stage, so basically you can load data in micro batches. This question specifically refers to how you actually integrate data pipelines like Kafka with your EDW, so with Snowflake. Are you using just Snowpipe as alone, or are you using other ways to ingest data?
So today, our Snowpipe is loading data from S3. So as I mentioned, really the data lands in S3, and then it's from S3 that we load the data. Now, I know Snowflake has a Kafka driver or Kafka connector that you can use to load the data directly from Kafka. But that, the way that operates is very similar to Snowpipe itself. So, for us, really using S3 as an internal staging environment, depending on the way we then trigger a copy, has worked very well for us. And as I mentioned, it gives us a little more control over the way in which the data is loaded in and then the way the files and micropartitions are sort of created in Snowflake after that.
Excellent. Another similar question to this is, are you using any data streaming capabilities? So on the left-hand side, you have your operational data stores that are piping data in, but as that data gets into your data warehouse, you run a bunch of analytics on it, and then on the right-hand side, you have analytics. So are there any real-time analytics that you're serving up to users?
Are there views from analytics that we're serving up to users?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think we're not just taking the raw data and showing the raw data to clients. So there are a few data sets that we're going to show, and these include really operational type reporting based on campaign data. That's going to be mostly in raw form with some aggregates on top of that. But there are other data that's very much derived and modeled and transformed to help enable the insights that our product serves up. So some examples there could be experiment reporting and experiment performance. So that's not just sitting directly on top of raw data. We're going to be running jobs that basically compute the performance, the attribution of various experiments so as to allow for more efficient lookups and actually just compute the answer to those questions.
Yeah, and then to follow on there, we're also, as you're able to run these different experiments across different channels, as the performance data comes in and gets loaded into Snowflake, we're able to, auto-optimize the weighting of each variant in the experiment based on performance. So that's, another example of analytics workload running on Snowflake, that's driving real-time decisioning.
Excellent. It's helpful. So this question and these series of questions are related to cost. As the development servers cost as much as production servers, are there any cost-saving strategies used for development activities?
To be honest, we haven't had a concern there yet. I mean, we've been keeping pretty close eye on the different workloads that we're using or the sort of virtual data warehouses that we're using. And really, again, we've been able to control costs with, as Jeannie mentioned, it's not just auto scaling up, it's auto scaling down. So we've got some pretty quick suspend time frames on both the dev, but also the sort of load and transform virtual data warehouses, and that's really helped control the cost.
Excellent. Before we get into more of the best practices, let's get into a couple more questions related to specific products. Do you use external tables reading directly from S3 within Snowflake?
We don't today. It is something that we're increasingly interested in, and there are potentially some use cases to go there. For the data that we're querying within Snowflake, we're really loading the data in to buy into all of Snowflake's metadata layer and their management of partitions, and using sort of other tools to query the data when it sits directly in S3 and is sort of partitioned within S3 itself. But that is something that we are considering and looking into in the near future.
Excellent. And related to that, so when bulk loading from S3, does metadata get captured or reclustering? Does reclustering need to be run for the metadata on the micropartition?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure. So when bulk loading from S3, does metadata get captured, or does reclustering need to be run for the metadata on the micropartition to be gathered?
Sure. So you don't need to run reclustering to get the metadata in. As immediately as the files are loaded in, Snowflake is computing the metadata that it needs to optimize the underlying queries or that it's going to serve up. Now, reclustering is really about just making sure that the data in each micropartition is the data that you want there. So according to the clustering keys that you specified on the table, and so that's where. Now, depending on when you load the data in, you might not have the optimal sort of records grouped in each micropartition, and that's where reclustering can really make sure that they're just grouped appropriately.
Excellent. There's a ton of really deep technical questions here, so you guys are handling them very well. I want to go into more about data sharing because we've gotten a handful of those. So how would you describe the security of data sharing? What are some things that you guys have done to make sure that data does not get exposed?
Well, so that's really where we look to Snowflake, and that's why sharing for us is sort of the preferred route when working with Snowflake. So the clients, when they're sharing the data directly with us, they own what is exposed to that share. And within Simon, we're further locking down the access once the share comes through. So with the share, it's sort of all out in the open in terms of understanding the access that is provided, and it's something that we can be even more confident in the security.
Excellent. So there's data sharing that people get a lot of value of, but there's also machine learning. So can you talk about any machine learning that you may use today to get more value from the data?
Matt, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So our approach here to machine learning is really, we have a robust data science team that partners with our customers on a one-to-one basis to build bespoke models that are relevant to their particular business and use cases they're trying to drive. So instead of a one-size-fits-all churn model where you fit your data into a specific schema, load it into our platform, and get an opaque churn model that you don't know how to apply to your use cases, we take the approach of we would like to build a churn model to predict when people are going to do X, Y, or Z activities, and we have a hypothesis that this type of marketing coupled with a model that predicts the moment to send it can reduce churn. And so we do a lot of feature engineering around that, test and iterate on the model, and then deploy an A/B holdout test against using that model to actually understand the value of that and really leverage the platform's experimentation capabilities along with models to find models that are valuable and can make meaningful long-term impact for the businesses we work with.
Excellent. So a couple more questions as we wrap up. This question is related to it's an interesting question. It's related to your due diligence when choosing Snowflake. So is there one key decision or one challenging question that we should be asking when we look at Snowflake versus competitors?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's really put us through its paces, right? Don't just take the marketing or take the sort of the capabilities at face value. Run your workload, what you're going to be using Snowflake for. Really put us through its paces and test it out, and then let the product either prove that it matches what you need or it doesn't. So I would say use before buying.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let the product speak for itself or not, and use before you buy. Okay, last question here. So a lot of questions came around best practices. So not just about writing complex SQL queries, but really optimizing query speed. What are some of the things that you can leave the audience with that has helped you guys improve performance?
I think the maybe the most basic, but also the one that's really helped us the most is looking at the query profiler. So, the Snowflake UI provides you with basically you can see every query as it's running. You can understand the virtual data warehouse that it's using, and you can really understand the load. But also, if you click into the query view, you can see the profile of the query. And on the right-hand side, it's really going to tell you the key numbers that drive query performance. And so, when the data is being scanned from S3, one of maybe the biggest driver of query performance is just how much data is getting pulled back from S3. And whatever you can do to really prune the data before it's pulled from S3, really the number of partitions that need to be read, that is going to have be a huge driver on underlying query performance. And so I would just say, learn the query planner, learn that view, and then use that to really help you optimize.
Yeah, that's such a key capability as a pair profile. When you see exactly where queries, things might have taken a lot longer than they should have. Well, that wraps it up for today's office hours. Cody and Matt, thanks again for your participation. And for the audience members, we still have a lot of questions to get through, and somebody will be reaching out to answer your questions. We'll see you at the next office hours in 2 weeks. Have a great day, everybody.